My husband died 5 years ago. Every single month, I sent his parents $200 to pay off a debt. One day, my neighbor grabbed my arm in the parking lot and whispered, "Stop sending them money. Check the security camera." What I discovered on that footage made me realize I'd been living a lie for 5 years. But before I tell you what I saw, you need to understand how I got here. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, because this story starts in Chicago, in a cramped apartment where my 7-year-old daughter and I were barely surviving. My name is Maya. I'm 33, an elementary school teacher, and for the past 5 years, I've been a widow. The 5th of every month, I perform the same ritual. I sit at my kitchen table, pull out my worn checkbook, and count out $200 in 20s. The bills feel thin between my fingers, almost weightless, but the burden they represent crushes me every time. Sophie, my daughter, sits across from me eating boxed macaroni and cheese. Again, it's the 3rd time this week. She's wearing shoes that are too small, the ones with duct tape covering the hole near her big toe. She doesn't complain. She never complains. That somehow makes it worse. "Mommy," she says, twirling her fork in the fluorescent orange pasta, "why do we always eat this on the 5th? I force a smile. The calendar on our fridge is circled in red marker. Payment day. Because we're helping Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Robert baby. They need medicine money. What I don't tell her is that these $200 represent 6 days of groceries. What I don't tell her is that I've been sending this exact amount for 58 consecutive months. What I don't tell her is that in 2 more payments, this nightmare will finally be over. Or at least, that's what I believed. My phone glows with my budgeting app. Remaining balance until next paycheck, $127. Rent is paid. Utilities are paid. But Sophie needs new shoes. She needs a winter coat. She needs so many things I can't afford because every month, without fail, I seal this money into an envelope and mail it to my dead husband's parents. The story they told me is simple. Before David got sick, before the cancer that would eventually take him, his parents withdrew their entire retirement savings. $12,000. They gave it to him for treatment, for specialists, for hope. When he died anyway, they were left with nothing. Just grief and debt and 2 empty bank accounts. Patricia, my mother-in-law, stood at David's funeral in a threadbare black dress. Her fingers, bony and cold, gripped my hand so tightly I thought my bones would crack. "He borrowed everything we had," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We gave him our future so he could fight. Now he's gone and we have nothing. We're destitute, Maya. Completely destitute." I looked at her sunken eyes, at Robert standing beside her with his head bowed, and I made a promise. I would repay every cent. $200 a month for 5 years. It was the last gesture of love I could give David. It was my way of honoring his memory, of making sure his parents didn't suffer because of the medical bills that destroyed our lives. I've kept that promise for 58 months. Through sleepless nights when I didn't know how I'd make rent. Through Sophie's birthday when I couldn't afford a real party. Through every moment when I had to choose between my daughter's needs and my obligation to the dead. I seal the envelope now, my hands moving through the familiar motions. The address is written in my careful handwriting. A modest neighborhood on the south side. Patricia and Robert's apartment, where they live on Social Security and whatever scraps I can send them. Sophie watches me. "Can I get new shoes next month, Mommy? These hurt." I look at her small face, at the hope in her eyes, and I feel something crack inside my chest. "Yes, baby. 2 more payments, and then we'll have money for shoes. I promise." What I didn't know was that at that exact moment, 2 miles away, Patricia was sipping champagne in a 1,200 square foot suite that cost $6,000 a month. What I didn't know was that the modest apartment address I'd been mailing to was a forwarding service. What I didn't know was that every word they told me was a carefully constructed lie. But I was about to find out. I dropped the envelope in the mailbox that afternoon. The metal slot clanged shut with a sound of finality. 58 payments down. 2 to go. I actually smiled, thinking about the freedom waiting on the other side of this debt. That night, after I tucked Sophie into bed and collapsed onto my own mattress, I stared at the ceiling and did the math I'd done 1,000 times before. 58 months times $200. $11,600. Plus the extra money I'd sent for birthdays, for emergencies, for the times Patricia called sobbing about medicine she couldn't afford. Probably $14,000 total. $14,000 I'd somehow scraped together on a teacher's salary while raising a daughter alone. I was proud of myself. Proud that I'd honored David's memory. Proud that I'd taken care of his parents even when it hurt. The exhaustion felt noble. The sacrifice felt holy. I had no idea I was a fool. The next evening, I was walking to my car after a long day of teaching second graders their multiplication tables. My feet ached. My head pounded. All I wanted was to pick up Sophie from after-school care and go home. But then I saw him. Carlos, my downstairs neighbor. He was standing by my car, and his face wasn't wearing its usual easy smile. Carlos was 40-something, a security guard who worked nights at various buildings around Chicago. Good man. Kind. The type who helped me carry groceries when he saw me struggling. But today, his expression was grave. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, stepping into my path. "We need to talk." I tried to move around him. "Long day, Carlos. I need to get Sophie." His hand touched my elbow. Gentle but insistent. "It's about those monthly payments you make. The ones to your husband's parents." I froze. My heart did something strange in my chest. "How do you know about that?" "Because I've been watching the security footage from the building where they supposedly live." He pulled something from his pocket. A USB drive. Small. Black. Heavy with implications I didn't yet understand. "You need to see what happens the day after you send that money." The parking lot gravel crunched under my feet. Somewhere in the distance, Sophie's school bus was approaching. The world was moving at normal speed, but I felt like I was underwater, everything distant and distorted. "Carlos, I don't understand. What are you talking about?" His eyes were kind but firm. "I've been a security guard for 15 years. I know a scam when I see one." He pressed the USB drive into my palm. "Check the footage. 4th floor landing. Every 6th of the month at 11:47 p.m. Then ask yourself, why does a struggling elderly woman meet a strange man at midnight?" "You're wrong," I said, but my voice shook. "Patricia and Robert are barely surviving. They need." "Do they?" He stepped back, giving me space. "Just look at the footage. Please. You deserve to know the truth." Sophie's bus pulled up. She waved from the window, her face bright with the innocent joy of a child who doesn't know her mother's world is about to shatter. I waved back, the USB drive burning like a coal in my closed fist. That night, after Sophie fell asleep clutching her worn stuffed rabbit, I sat at my laptop. The USB drive sat next to my cold coffee. I stared at it for 20 minutes, my cursor hovering over the icon, afraid to click. Part of me didn't want to know. Part of me wanted to keep believing I was doing something good, something noble, something that made David proud from wherever he watched. But the voice in my head, David's voice, the one I heard in my loneliest moments, whispered, "Look." I clicked. The footage was grainy, black and white, the kind you see in crime documentaries. The timestamp read, 6th of previous month, 11:47 p.m. A camera angle showing a landing between floors. Empty hallway. Dim light. At 11:47 and 23 seconds, a figure emerged from the stairwell. Not from an apartment. From outside the building. It was Patricia. But this wasn't the Patricia I knew. Not the hunched woman in threadbare clothes who answered her door with suspicious, weary eyes. This Patricia wore a coat I recognized from the Nordstrom window display. $800. I'd seen it while walking Sophie past the store, and she'd asked if I liked it. I'd laughed and said maybe when I won the lottery. Patricia's coat was that exact coat. She looked around the empty landing, nervous but not afraid. She checked her phone. At 11:52, footsteps echoed. A man appeared, 30s, well-dressed, expensive suit, the kind of watch that costs more than my monthly rent. They embraced, not like strangers making an awkward exchange, like family, warm, familiar, easy. Patricia handed him something I couldn't quite see. He handed her an envelope, thick, the way envelopes look when they're stuffed with cash. They talked for 4 minutes. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see Patricia's body language. Relaxed, laughing. At one point, she touched his arm affectionately. He kissed her cheek before leaving. Patricia opened the envelope after he left. I watched her count the contents. Even through the grainy footage, I could see her smile. Satisfied, pleased, she tucked the envelope into her expensive coat and disappeared down the stairs. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the desk to steady myself. I clicked on the next file. Same date, 1 month earlier. Same time. Same exchange. Same man. Same envelope. Another file. Another month. Another midnight meeting. Carlos had given me 12 months of footage. Every single time, the pattern repeated. The 6th of every month, Patricia met this man. Received an envelope. Smiled. Left. The day after I sent my payment, I watched the most recent footage 5 times. On the 5th viewing, I paused on the clearest shot of the man's face. Something about him tugged at my memory. His eyes, the way he stood, the slope of his shoulders. I pulled out my wedding album from the shelf, where it had gathered dust for 5 years. Flipped through pages of David's smile, of our happiness before cancer stole everything. Found the section with family photos. There, a picture from David's childhood. He was maybe 8 years old, standing with his parents and a smaller boy, 5 or 6 years old. Chubby cheeks, wide eyes. I held the photo next to my laptop screen. Compare the child's face to the man's face. Same eyes, same nose, same bone structure. My vision blurred. The room spun. No, I whispered. No, no, no. Patricia had told me David was an only child. She said they'd lost a baby before David was born. A stillbirth. A grief they'd never recovered from. But the boy in this photo wasn't a stillborn baby. He was a living, breathing child standing next to his brother. David had a brother Patricia had erased from existence. I sat in the dark of my apartment, laptop glowing, wedding album open, and felt reality crack apart like ice under pressure. Everything I'd believed for 5 years was melting into dark water. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend, Jasmine. Still on for coffee tomorrow. I stared at the message. Jasmine, the night shift nurse who'd been my rock through everything. I called her. It was late, almost midnight, but she answered on the second ring. Maya, what's wrong? Jazz, I need to tell you something crazy. I need you to tell me I'm not losing my mind. Talk to me. The words poured out. The footage. The expensive coat. The mysterious man. The child in the photo. By the time I finished, I was crying, and I hadn't even realized tears were falling. Jasmine was silent for a long moment. Then, Maya, I've seen him. What? The man you're describing. 3 months ago, I saw him in the hospital parking garage during my shift. He was arguing with an older woman. I couldn't hear everything, but she kept saying, she doesn't need to know, and he said, this has gone on too long. I thought it was strange, but I didn't. Maya, I think they were talking about you. The bottom dropped out of my world. Who is he? I whispered. I don't know, but I can tell you this. He drives an expensive car, and he was wearing a pharmaceutical company badge. MedPharm Solutions. I remember because we work with their reps sometimes. I was already typing before she finished speaking. MedPharm Solutions. Enter. Nathan Harrison, Chicago. The search results loaded. LinkedIn profile. Nathan Harrison, Regional Sales Director, MedPharm Solutions. His photo filled my screen. The same man from the footage. Professional headshot. Confident smile. The caption under his photo read, passionate about healthcare access. Family is everything. Family is everything. I clicked through his profile. His posts about pharmaceutical innovations. His photos from charity events. And there, buried 3 months deep, a caption that made my stomach turn. Supporting the parents who sacrificed everything for me. Family first. Blue heart. The comments below. Such a good son. Your parents are so lucky to have you. You're an inspiration. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. Jasmine. His name is Nathan Harrison. He's David's brother. And he has no idea I exist. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Sophie was already at school, and I sat surrounded by printed screenshots, wedding albums, and the crushing weight of a truth I was still trying to comprehend. David had a brother named Nathan. But Patricia and Robert had told me he died in childhood. They told David I never married, never had a child, died alone. They built a fortress of lies to keep their sons apart even after death. But why? I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Nathan's company had a contact us page with his direct email. I stared at it, cursor blinking, trying to figure out what to say. How do you introduce yourself to someone who doesn't know you exist? How do you tell a man that his dead brother's widow has been sending money based on lies his parents created? I drafted a message, deleted it, drafted again, deleted again. Finally, I wrote, Mr. Harrison, I'm coordinating pharmaceutical supplies for Lincoln Elementary School District. Would you be available to discuss our needs over lunch? I can work with your schedule. Professional. Neutral. A meeting he'd have no reason to refuse. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came 19 minutes later. Happy to help. Thursday at 12:30 work. There's a bistro near my office, Riverside Bistro on Clark Street. I typed back. Perfect. See you then. 3 days. I had 3 days to prepare for a conversation that would either confirm everything or prove I'd lost my mind. I spent those 3 days gathering every scrap of evidence I could find. Bank statements showing my payments, the security footage Carlos had given me, David's death certificate, medical records proving his cancer treatment was fully covered by insurance. Everything organized into a folder labeled The Truth About Your Parents. Jasmine came over the night before the meeting. Are you sure about this? What if he's in on it? What if he's dangerous? I thought about Sophie, about her shoes with holes, about 5 years of sacrifice based on lies. Then at least I'll know. At least I'll have tried. Thursday morning, I put on my only good dress, the black one I'd worn to David's funeral. It seemed appropriate. I was about to bury a lie 5 years in the making. I arrived at Riverside Bistro 15 minutes early, sat at a table near the window where I could watch the door. The folder sat on the chair beside me, heavy with truth. At 12:28, he walked in. Tall, confident, David's eyes in a stranger's face. He tipped the hostess generously, and my heart cracked because David used to do the same thing. He spotted me, smiled David's smile, and walked over. Mrs. He extended his hand. I stood, shook his hand, felt David's warmth in his grip. Maya Harrison. He pulled out his chair. So, Lincoln Elementary, right? What kind of supplies are you? I didn't bring you here to talk about pharmaceutical supplies. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I brought you here to talk about your brother David. The color drained from his face. His hand, halfway to reaching for the water glass, froze in midair. I'm sorry, what did you say? I slid the folder across the table. I said I'm your sister-in-law. I'm David's widow. And your parents have been lying to both of us for 5 years. Nathan stared at the folder like it was a bomb. David never. They told me he never married. That he died alone. That he never forgave them for. He stopped. Swallowed hard. How do I know you're telling the truth? I opened the folder. The first photo was our wedding. David in his tux, me in my simple white dress, both of us laughing at something the photographer said. The second photo was Sophie's birth. David holding our daughter for the first time, tears streaming down his face. The third was David's funeral. Patricia and Robert in the front row, sobbing theatrically. Nathan's hands started shaking. He picked up the wedding photo, held it close, and I watched his face crumble. I was at that funeral. How did I not see you? Because they told me family seating was full. They made me sit in the back with people who barely knew him. They said you died when David was 12. His head snapped up. What? That's what they told me. That David was an only child. That they'd lost a baby before he was born. I pushed forward the next document. Security footage screenshots. But you're not dead. You're meeting Patricia at midnight every month. The day after I sent her $200 to repay a debt that never existed. Nathan stared at the photos. His breathing got faster. He stood up suddenly, chair scraping, other diners glancing over. He paced to the window and back, hands in his hair. Every month on the 5th, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I send them $3,000. The restaurant noise faded. I heard nothing but those words echoing. 3,000. He nodded, still pacing. They told me they were broke, living on Social Security, could barely afford food. I've been sending money for 5 years, ever since David died, and I thought, I thought I'd failed him, failed to protect him from them. I thought the least I could do was take care of his parents. I did the math in my head. $3,000 a month. 60 months. $180,000. My $14,000 suddenly felt like pocket change. Nathan. Sit down. Please. He sat. His eyes were red. I pulled out the next document. A brochure for Willowbrook Luxury Senior Living. Yesterday I followed Patricia. She doesn't live in a modest apartment surviving on Social Security. She lives here. $6,000 a month. 1,200 square foot suite with spa bathrooms and chef-prepared meals. I watched him process this. Watched his face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally, devastating understanding. They've been collecting from both of us, he said, while living in luxury, while making us think. He couldn't finish. Put his head in his hands. What would you do in that moment? Comment below. Would you press charges? Would you confront them? Or would you walk away? I let him sit with it for a minute. Then I pulled out the final document. The one that had taken me 3 days to get. There's more. I went to David's lawyer. The one who handled his estate. David left something. A safety deposit box with a letter inside. Nathan looked up. What letter? I unfolded it with shaking hands. The paper was yellowed. David's handwriting familiar and painful. Dated 1 week before he died. He knew, I said. David knew what they were capable of. I read it aloud, and David's voice filled the space between us. My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I need to tell you about my parents. They've always been manipulators. When I was 12, they told me Nathan had died to punish him for disrespecting them. I didn't see my brother for 8 years. I thought he was dead. I grieved him. When I was 20, Nathan found me. He'd been alive the whole time. They'd made him believe I'd abandoned him. They did it to control us both. They disowned Nathan when he refused to support their lavish lifestyle. They'll do the same to you after I'm gone. They'll claim debts, emergencies, anything to guilt you into giving them money. Don't believe them, Maya. The only debt I have is the love I owe you and our child. I've left everything to you. My insurance covered every cent of treatment. I never borrowed money from them. Not $1. Protect our daughter from them. They don't deserve to know her. They'll use her to hurt you. I love you. Don't let them take that from you. David. By the time I finished reading, we were both crying. Other diners pretended not to notice, but I felt their eyes anyway. Nathan's voice was broken. He tried to warn you. And I've been sending them money thinking I was honoring his memory. We both have. They made us both pay for his death. He laughed bitterly. They collected almost $200,000 from us while living like royalty. While making us think they were suffering. I folded the letter carefully. Nathan, I need to know something. Did you know about me? About Sophie? He looked me straight in the eye. I swear on David's grave I had no idea. They told me he died alone. That he'd never forgiven them. That he'd cut off all contact before he got sick. His voice cracked. I have a niece. Sophie. She's 7. She has David's eyes. He put his face in his hands and sobbed. Right there in the middle of a restaurant at lunch hour. And I let him, because I understood. He'd been robbed too. Not just of money, but of family. Of connection. Of the chance to know his brother's child. When he finally looked up, his face was different. Harder. Resolved. What do we do? I smiled. Cold. Calculated. We make them confess. Publicly. In front of witnesses. So they can never lie about David again. When? Next month is their 40th wedding anniversary. They're having a party at Willowbrook. 40 guests. All their friends. His eyes widened. You want to confront them at their anniversary party? I want to give them the anniversary gift they deserve. The truth. We spent the next hour planning. Nathan had access to their financial records through the gifts he'd sent. I had the security footage and David's letter. Together, we had an airtight case. There's one more thing, Nathan said as we prepared to leave. I want to meet her. Sophie. I want to meet my niece before we do this. I studied his face. Saw David's kindness there. His gentleness. Tomorrow. Come for dinner. But Nathan, I grabbed his arm. If this goes wrong, if they somehow turn this around on us, I need you to promise me something. Promise Promise me you'll help protect Sophie. I promise. On David's memory, I promise. The next evening, Nathan arrived at my cramped apartment carrying flowers and a stuffed animal. His hands shook as he knocked. Sophie answered the door. Who are you? Nathan knelt to her level. I'm your Uncle Nathan. I'm your daddy's brother. Sophie studied him with 7-year-old skepticism. Daddy's dead? Grandma said he didn't have a brother. I know, but I'm here now. And I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner. Sophie looked at him for a long moment. Then, you have Daddy's eyes. Nathan's face crumpled. He started crying, and Sophie, with the intuitive compassion of children, hugged him. Don't cry. Mommy says Daddy watches us from heaven. Maybe he sent you. I watched from the doorway, my own tears falling, as my daughter met the uncle she'd been robbed of for 7 years. That night, after Sophie went to bed clutching the stuffed animal Nathan brought, we sat at my kitchen table planning our attack. Nathan had printed financial records. I had organized the security footage. We had David's letter as the centerpiece. The party is 3 weeks away, Nathan said. We need everything perfect. Printed evidence. A presentation. We need them trapped with no escape route. I've been thinking about that. I pulled out my phone. Your parents sent me a threatening text last week. After you and I met for lunch. Someone must have seen us together. I showed him the message. A photo of Sophie leaving school. Caption, beautiful granddaughter. Would be a shame if she learned what her mother is planning. Nathan's face went white, then red, then hard as stone. They threatened a child. They threatened their own granddaughter. Which means they know we're on to them. Which means we have to be careful. Or, Nathan said slowly, it means we have them for witness intimidation. That's a crime, Maya. A serious one. I hadn't thought of that. You think we should involve police? Not yet. Not until after we expose them. But we should talk to a lawyer. Document everything. Make sure when this is over, they can't wiggle out of consequences. We spent the next 2 weeks preparing like we were building a legal case. Because, in a way, we were. Nathan hired a lawyer named Marcus Chun, a sharp-eyed man who reviewed our evidence with growing anger. This is fraud, Chun said, spreading documents across his desk. Forgery, witness intimidation, possibly elder abuse in reverse. In reverse, I asked. Usually we see children scamming elderly parents, but your in-laws pretended to be vulnerable to exploit you both. Courts take that very seriously. He looked at us over his glasses. What do you want? Criminal charges? Civil suit? Or private settlement? Nathan and I exchanged glances. We'd already discussed this. We want them exposed, I said. We want everyone who knows them to understand what they did. We want their reputation destroyed. Then the anniversary party is perfect, Chin said. Public setting. Multiple witnesses. I'll attend as a guest. They don't know me. I'll document everything for legal purposes. 3 days before the party, Nathan came to my apartment for a final rehearsal. Sophie was doing homework at the table, and she looked up when he entered. Uncle Nathan! She ran to hug him. He'd been visiting regularly, taking her to the park, helping with homework, being the Uncle David wanted her to have, the Uncle Patricia and Robert had stolen from her. After Sophie went to bed, we practiced our presentation. Nathan played devil's advocate, throwing out every excuse Patricia might use. They'll say they needed the money for medical care, he said. Then we show their facility bills. $6,000 a month doesn't leave much room for poverty. They'll say we're lying, that the evidence is fabricated. Then we have multiple witnesses, security guards, facility staff, their own lawyer. They'll cry. They'll play the victim. I smiled coldly. Then we show David's letter. Let him speak for himself. We worked until midnight, refining every detail. The presentation boards were professionally printed, the evidence organized chronologically. The lawyer briefed on every possible outcome. Are you scared? Nathan asked as he prepared to leave. Terrified. You. Same. But more than scared, I'm angry. They took 8 years of my childhood. They took my brother from me twice, once in life, once in death. They stole from his widow and daughter. He looked towards Sophie's bedroom door. They don't get to win. Not this time. The morning of the anniversary party, I woke up at 5 a.m. Couldn't sleep. Sophie found me in the kitchen, staring at cold coffee. Today's the day you fix things, right, Mommy? I pulled her into my lap. Yes, baby. Are you going to yell at Grandma and Grandpa? No. I'm just going to tell the truth. Will they be mad? I thought about that. Probably. But sometimes the truth makes people mad. That doesn't mean we shouldn't tell it. She nodded seriously. Then, is Uncle Nathan going to be there? Yes. Good. Then you won't be alone. Out of the mouths of babes. Jasmine arrived at noon to watch Sophie. Go get them, she said, hugging me tight. And call me the second it's over. I drove to Willowbrook in my car, Nathan following in his. We decided to arrive separately, him first, expected and welcomed, me second, a surprise attack. The common room was decorated beautifully. White tablecloths, fresh flowers, a banner reading 40 years of love and commitment. Servers circulated with champagne. Guests mingled, all of them elegantly dressed elderly people and their adult children. Patricia held court in the center, wearing a designer dress I'd seen in a boutique window for $1,200. Robert stood beside her in a new suit, his wrist sporting a Rolex. They looked prosperous, happy, like people who'd never suffered a day in their lives. Nathan arrived at 1 p.m., kissed his mother's cheek, handed over a card, chatted with guests, playing his part perfectly. I watched through the window from outside, my presentation board wrapped in cloth, my heart hammering. Patricia leaned close to Nathan. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw her lips move. You forgot last month's check. Nathan smiled in a waver. Did I? Must have slipped my mind. Her eyes narrowed, but she couldn't make a scene. Not here. Not in front of everyone. At 1:15 I walked through the door. The room didn't fall silent immediately. A few people noticed me first. Then a few more. Conversation stuttered and stopped. Patricia turned to see what everyone was staring at. When she saw me, her champagne glass slipped from her hand. It hit the marble floor with a crash that echoed through the sudden silence. Glass shattered. Champagne spread like blood. Every eye in the room turned to watch. I walked to the center of the space, my heels clicking on marble. Set up my presentation board. Pulled off the cloth covering. The first image was blown up to poster size. The forged debt document Patricia had created, supposedly signed by David. Next to it, David's actual signature from our marriage license. They didn't match. Good afternoon, I said, voice carrying across the frozen room. Thank you all for celebrating Patricia and Robert's 40th anniversary. I'm Maya Harrison, David's widow, mother of his daughter Sophie, and I brought photos to share. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Patricia tried to speak. This isn't appropriate. I continued as if she hadn't spoken. For 5 years, I've been sending Patricia and Robert $200 every month to repay a debt they claimed David owed them. $12,000 for cancer treatment. I unveiled the second image. David's medical records. Every page stamped. Paid in full. Insurance. Except David never borrowed money. His treatment was completely covered. The debt was fiction. Murmurs now. Confused looks between guests. Robert stepped forward. You don't understand the full circumstances. Nathan moved to stand beside me. Let me help explain, Dad. He unveiled his own boards. Bank statements. Records of $3,000 monthly deposits. I've been sending money to. For 5 years. Because you told me you were broke. Living on Social Security. Could barely afford food. He showed the next image. Willowbrook facility bills. $6,000 per month. A woman in the crowd gasped. Patricia, you told me you were living in public housing. We are struggling, Patricia said, voice rising desperately. You don't know how expensive. Let me show everyone what you're struggling with. I unveiled the photo taken yesterday. Patricia and Robert at Willowbrook's restaurant. Filet mignon. Wine. Robert leaving $100 tip in cash from a money clip stuffed with bills. The room was no longer just confused. It was turning hostile. Nathan's voice cut through. Between us, Maya and I have sent you almost $200,000 over 5 years. While you lived here in luxury. While you made us believe you were suffering. We deserve that money. Patricia's facade cracked. David left us nothing. He gave everything to her. She pointed at me with a shaking finger. We raised him. We sacrificed. and he chose a stranger over us. I wasn't a stranger. I was his wife, the mother of his child, a child we weren't allowed to know. Robert's voice joined Patricia's. You kept our granddaughter from us. You never asked to see her. Every time I offered to bring Sophie, you said you were too sick, too tired, too busy. I kept my voice level. But that was a lie too, wasn't it? You didn't want to see her. You just wanted the money. Nathan pulled out the final piece of evidence. David's letter. He read it aloud, every damning word, and I watched Patricia and Robert's faces cycle through emotions. Anger, fear, desperation. When he finished, the room was silent except for the sound of Patricia crying. But these weren't the gentle tears of a grieving mother. These were the tears of someone caught. He never forgave us, she sobbed. He blamed us for Nathan's, for the lies we told. We did what we thought was right. You faked my death, Nathan said, voice hard. You told David I was dead for 8 years. You told me he'd abandoned our family. You kept us apart because we wouldn't play your games. A man in the crowd stood up. Patricia, I've known you for 3 years. You told me you only had one son, that he died without giving you grandchildren. You said you were living on scraps from his insurance. Another woman, you asked me to donate to a fund for your medical bills. I gave you $5,000. The dominoes were falling. Other guests speaking up, sharing lies Patricia and Robert had told. A pattern of manipulation stretching back years. The facility director approached, her face grave. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, I need to speak with you privately. Now. We haven't done anything wrong. Patricia's voice turned shrill. They're lying. They're trying to. Nathan handed the director a folder. Everything you need. Dates. Amounts. Proof of fraud. Proof of witness intimidation, they threatened Sophie. The director's face hardened. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Willowbrook has a zero-tolerance policy for financial abuse of any kind, including family members. Patricia's knees buckled. Robert caught her. They stood there, surrounded by shocked guests. Their perfect anniversary party turned into a public trial. I stepped closer, close enough that only they could hear. You had 5 years to tell the truth. You chose greed. You made me believe honoring David meant starving his daughter. You made Nathan think supporting you meant supporting David's memory. You used our love against us. Patricia looked at me with pure hatred. You've destroyed us. No. You destroyed yourselves. I just made sure everyone else could see what you really are. Nathan and I left them there. Walked out of Willowbrook into afternoon sunshine. Behind us, we could hear Patricia sobbing, Robert shouting, guests muttering in shock. In the parking lot, I started shaking. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation evaporated all at once. Nathan caught me as my knees gave out. It's over, he said. It's really over. 2 weeks later, the lawyer called. Patricia and Robert wanted a plea deal. Full restitution of all funds. Probation. Community service. They'd avoid trial if we accepted. Nathan and I sat in Chen's office, considering. What do you think? Nathan asked. I think David would want Sophie to have her money back. I don't think he'd want her knowing her grandparents died in prison. They threatened her. And they'll pay. Probation means supervision. Community service means public shame every week for 2 years. I looked at Chen. What happens if we reject the deal? Trial. Publicity. They'd probably get 5 to 7 years, given their age and the amount stolen. I thought about Sophie. About explaining to her why her grandparents were in prison. About the questions she'd ask. The hurt she'd carry. Tell them we accept. With one condition. What condition? The admission of guilt is written. Signed. Notarized. And I keep a copy forever. So if they ever try to contact Sophie, I have proof of exactly who they are. 3 weeks later, a check arrived. $16,000. My payments plus interest. I deposited every cent into Sophie's college fund. Nathan was waiting at the bank. I want to add something. He showed me a form. Automatic monthly deposits of $500 into Sophie's account. Nathan, you don't have to. I was supposed to be her uncle for 7 years. Let me make up for lost time. 6 months passed. Patricia and Robert moved to a basic Medicaid facility. The life they pretended to live for sympathy became their reality. They sent one letter, then another, then they stopped. Nathan became a constant presence in our lives. Sunday dinners, Sophie's school events, the family we should have had all along. One evening, Sophie and I were cleaning up after Nathan left. She was drying dishes, humming to herself. "Mommy, are we going to Uncle Nathan's for dinner next week?" "Friday. He's making spaghetti." "Is Uncle Nathan our family now?" I knelt down, looked into her eyes, David's eyes. "Uncle Nathan has always been our family, baby. We just didn't know it yet." "What about Grandma and Grandpa?" My heart clenched. Some people don't know how to love without hurting. We're better off with people who know how. "Like Uncle Nathan?" "Exactly like Uncle Nathan." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to drying dishes. A year after the confrontation, I stood in my new kitchen. Small house. Nothing fancy. But it was ours. Bought with the money I'd no longer been sending to Patricia and Robert. Sophie's laughter drifted in from the backyard where Nathan was helping her plant tomatoes. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo appeared. Patricia and Robert, old and worn, standing outside their Medicaid facility. The caption, "Hope you're happy. You destroyed our lives." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it without responding. Nathan appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect." And it was. Not because the ending was happy. Some endings aren't happy, they're just over. But because I'd learned what family really means. It's not who shares your blood. It's who shows up, who fights beside you, who protects your child, who turns pain into strength. David left me a warning about his parents, but he also left me his brother. And that was the greatest gift he could have given. People ask me if I regret the 5 years I spent sending money. If I wish I discovered the truth sooner. But here's what I learned. You can't control when you discover you've been lied to. You can only control what you do once you know. Patricia and Robert stole 5 years of my life. But they also showed me what I was capable of. They showed me I was stronger than I'd ever known. They showed me that love isn't about blind sacrifice. It's about knowing when to fight and what to fight for. Sophie graduated college with a full academic scholarship in 2039. Nathan walked her down the aisle at her wedding in 2042. Patricia and Robert sent a card. It was returned unopened. Some chapters deserve to stay closed. If this story touched you, drop a like. Subscribe for more stories about finding strength you never knew you had. And comment below, have you ever discovered someone you trusted was lying to you? How did you handle it? Because the truth is, we all face moments when we have to choose between comfortable lies and painful truths. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is open our eyes and look.